Hello everybody, Jennifer Maker here. It's a beautiful day to learn how to use your Infusible Ink markers to make beautiful watercolor style mugs with a Cricut. I love this approach because you can have the Cricut do the outline and then you get to color in the design like a coloring book. And with a few tips, you can make a mug that looks like it was painted with watercolors, but the design is completely permanent. So Infusible ink markers and pens are really interesting because they're actually a type of sublimation ink. That means the color dyes the surface of a compatible blank like these mugs. Now sublimation ink needs polymers, which is a type of plastic to dye, and the ink is translucent, so any color on the blank will impact the result. That's why I'm using white sublimation mugs that come with the sublimation polymer coating already in place. Now these are Cricut mugs, and they say they're specifically for Infusible ink, so you know they'll work. But how do you get the colors onto the mug like this? So you'll need paper for the design and heat to transfer it to the mug. Now I prefer to use a Cricut to cut out a perfect template that gets wrapped around the mug and then sublimated using the Cricut Mug Press. But there are other ways to transfer your design to a mug. And since I don't want to test my drawing skills today or yours, we'll use the Cricut to draw the design's outline on the paper and then color it in by hand. There are different Infusible ink pens and markers for the different types of Cricut cutting machines, so make sure you get the ones that fit your machine. I'm using my Cricut Maker in this video with the black pen from the Cricut Ultimate Infusible Ink pen set for the outline. And when it's time to color by hand, I'm using the Ultimate set of 1mm markers. There are lots of Infusible ink pens and markers available, so you can experiment with others. I use these ones in my Maker, but there are also markers made for freehand drawing that don't fit in the Maker. They're just for drawing by hand. And you just do this as simply or as detailed as you want. That is the fun of this. If you have pens and markers for an Explorer or Maker, they can also fit in the Venture with the included adapter. Then the Joy and the Joy Extra have their own pens and markers, but note that they do not fit in the larger machines. So always make sure you have the right type. Next up, the paper. I tested a few different kinds of paper to see which one made a mug that was reminiscent of a watercolor painting without water, and watercolor paper was the winner. Even better, it's thicker than normal paper, so you don't need extra layers during sublimation. You will need heat-resistant tape to keep everything in place, so make sure you have plenty. I'm using the A4 size watercolor paper, which is very close to letter size. This kind is cold press, and it's a really nice quality, which I think helps it hold more sublimation ink to make a more colorful transfer with some of the paper's texture in the final design. This size fits on any of the Makers, the Explorer, the Venture, and the Joy Extra. If you want to use this paper with the original Joy, just cut it down to size to fit on a machine mat, a long machine mat, and you are all set. Now, since this is sublimation and it involves turning the ink into a gas for a little while, make sure you have a fan going and or open a window to improve your ventilation. Always craft safely. There are some more basic Cricut and sublimation tools and supplies you'll need. You'll find the full list at jennifermaker.com/595 for details. That's also where you can get the 2 free designs that I'm sharing. One has butterflies and the other has more cute flowers. You can download them through my free resource library, which has hundreds of designs for all sorts of projects. Just go to jennifermaker.com/595 for details. That's also the blog post for these mugs where you can find links to everything that I'm using and a written tutorial with images. So let me show you where to get these free designs, and then we can start drawing. Step 1, get my free watercolor mug designs. First, download my designs at jennifermaker.com/595. You can either download right from that link by saving the project or download from my entire free design collection. To find it, look for libraries in the red bar at the top, and then click either get a password if you don't yet have one, or click enter the library. Search the page for design number 595 and click the link to download the designs. If you're not sure how to do this, visit jennifermaker.com/svgs to learn how to download and unzip files. In the download folder, there are PDFs that you can print and cut or trace by hand, but I'll show you how to use the SVG files with a Cricut cutting machine in this video. The files also work with other cutting machines, or you can use the DXF files if that's what your machine uses. The SVG folder has two pretty mug wrap designs, one with butterflies and one with flowers. Each includes a template for the 12-ounce mug and the 15-ounce mug. You can use these steps to prepare either design, but I'll demonstrate with the butterflies. Step 2. Prepare your watercolor ink mug design. On a blank canvas in Cricut Design Space, click Upload and then Upload Image. Click Browse and select the file that you want to use. I'll pick the butterfly design. On the Prepare to Upload screen, make sure it says Cut Image in the Design Preview. Click Upload, then find the design in Recent Uploads and add it to the canvas. The design is made up of 3 layers. The top layer is the cut shape to wrap a 12-ounce Cricut mug. The next fits a 15-ounce mug, and then there is the decoration as an outline. We need to pick a template and do some prep steps, so click Ungroup to work with them separately. Delete the template for the mug that you don't want to use, so I'll get rid of the smaller one and keep the slightly larger one to fit a 15-ounce mug. With the design selected, click Operation to see the options in the drop-down menu, and then select Pen, which works for both pens and markers. Cricut Design Space assumes we want to use the normal fine point pen, but that won't transfer to a mug, so click the color box for the pen options. Select F fine point 0.4 millimeters and a color with Infusible Ink in the name. I think black is the easiest to draw the outlines with, but feel free to pick another color if you have that pen available. With the design still selected, click Arrange and Bring to Front to move it above the template layer. Leave the template layer as a basic cut operation because we'll use the Cricut's fine point blade to cut the wrap shape after it draws the design. If you've made other mugs using a mug press, you might know that we usually cut more copies of the wrap shape to protect the design. But the watercolor paper is thick enough that we don't need them in this case. We want the design to be in the correct spot though, so hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and select both the illustration and its template in the Layers panel. Up at the top, click Align and select Center to move the design to the middle of the template. And with them both still selected, click Attach so your Cricut knows we want to run these operations in the exact spots. We'll add the color by hand, so that's all there is to do. Make sure the correct machine is selected in the top right and click Make. On the Prepare screen, set the material size to match your paper. I'm using 8.3 inch by 11.7 inch A4 watercolor paper. And don't forget to toggle on Mirror, since we'll use heat to apply the design like most sublimation projects. Then click Continue. On the Make screen, search for and set your base material as heavy watercolor paper 140 pounds. Also change the pressure to more for a cleaner cut since this is pretty thick paper. Put your watercolor paper face up on a green standard grip machine mat so that the orientation matches the screen preview. Then use a brayer to roll all over the paper so it sticks really well to the mat. The screen will show you prompts about loading your tools depending on the machine you're using. When you're ready, make sure your fine point blade is clean and loaded in the clamp. And when it's time to load the black Infusible Ink pen, take off the cap and put it on the pen's end to avoid losing it. And then be sure to test the pen on some scrap paper to make sure it's flowing well. Put the pen in the clamp as prompted and load your mat with the paper oriented correctly and press the flashing button to begin drawing and cutting. When it's finished, unload the mat, flip the mat over onto your work surface, and carefully peel the mat away from the paper. Step 3. Color your watercolor ink mug design. Now the fun part, the coloring. Place the design face up on your work surface. The watercolor paper is pretty thick, but you can put scrap paper underneath to protect your table in case any ink bleeds through. The Infusible ink markers don't always look like you'd expect from the outside, so I like to make a little swatch card to plan my colors and keep track of them all. It's easy, plus it's a good way to make sure they're all working well. Just take a scrap of watercolor paper and draw a little shape like a heart with each marker, then write its name next to it. Pick the first element you want to color and the markers you'll use. You'll want to work pretty quickly and complete a shape before the ink dries to get even results. I'll color a large butterfly with sky blue at the wings edges and sage, which is a lighter blue, on the inside. So starting with the darker ink, color the first section, like along one wing's edge, just like a coloring book. You can add quite a bit of ink to the paper without damaging the texture, which will impact the final look on the mug. While the color is still wet, use the next color, and that's sage for me, to overlap some of the first and keep coloring the section. I'll color toward where the wing's bottom and top meet. You could use the lighter color to slightly pull the darker color into the new area, helping to blend the markers. Now, before moving to another section, go back over the dark color with the light one to help blend them and make sure you don't have any white spots. Continue coloring this shape in sections, blending the colors when you want to. You can color over the black outline some. It may pick up some of the black color, but the slight differences make the end result look more handmade, like a true watercolor painting. And it's okay if you go outside the lines too. That's normal with watercolor painting and handmade items. You can use the same technique on the flowers. I used orange peel as the dark color on some of the petals' edges and where they meet the center to add depth, and sunflower to fill them in. For the flower's petals, I used sunflower as the darker color and butterscotch to fill it in. I used green and lime together, as well as green apple and lime for the greenery. You can experiment with different combinations, of course. Let the mug wrap sit to dry completely, which might take a few minutes. Step 4. Sublimate your watercolor ink mug. Infusible ink is a form of sublimation, so remember to open a window and/or turn on a fan to help with ventilation. Now place a heat-resistant pad like the Easy Press pressing mat on your work surface to protect it. Then put the Cricut Mug Press on top and plug it in. Press the power button and it will start warming up immediately. There isn't a temperature to set, so don't worry. You can tell the press is heating up when the top light turns to a solid orange. In the meantime, you'll want to use a lint roller to remove any dirt or debris from your mug surface. And make sure the inks are completely dry, because when you start to position the design on the mug, damp ink can smudge onto the surface. Even if they're tiny at first, the marks can become more pronounced after the pressing. Now, watercolor paper is thicker than normal printer or sublimation paper, so taking some extra time to tape the design very tightly around the mug creates a better transfer and the detail that we want to transfer from the paper's texture. So take a piece of heat transfer tape and fold one end over onto itself to make a tab that isn't sticky, which makes removing the paper easier later on. With the drawing facing up and toward the mug and oriented correctly, wrap the design tightly around the mug with the ends coming together under the handle. While holding the paper tight, attach the tape's plain end to one paper end under the handle. Bring the ends under the handle together as much as you can so the paper is flush against the surface and the uncovered areas at the top and bottom are even. There will still be a gap of uncovered mug, and that's okay. Secure the other end of the tape to the free design edge. Press the tape down very well on both paper ends and the mug in between. Now the watercolor paper might lift a little on the shaped ends, and if there are any gaps, they can let the ink escape when the heat turns it into a gas. We do not want this. If there are gaps, make another tabbed tape piece and attach the free end diagonally to the corner so the tab can reach either inside or the bottom of the mug, but don't press it down quite yet. Use one thumb to press the paper tightly to the mug, then move your thumb along the tape to make sure the lifted paper is smooth. Now secure the tape to the mug. Then secure the other 3 corners the same way so everything is evenly tight. Now look closely along the top and bottom edges of the paper and check for gaps between it and the mug. If you see any gaps, add more tape pieces the same way to make sure the entire design is tight against the mug. Once the wrap is completely secure and the power button on your mug press is green and ready, you can sublimate. Hold your wrapped mug by the handle and place it in the heating chamber with the opening at the top. Pay attention to where the mug handle is and make sure the heat plate appears to be covering all of your design. Moving the handle a bit to the left rather than centering it helps. Now close the clamp on top of the press and check that the heat plate is still covering your design. If it's not, immediately open the clamp and reposition the mug and close the clamp again. Closing the clamp starts the transfer, so you don't have to press any buttons to begin or anything like that, which is pretty cool. An average mug takes about 6 minutes, and you can tell it's ready when the mug press beeps. Just lift up on the clamp to release it and pull the mug out by the handle, which will not be hot. Just don't touch the other parts or the heat plate in the press. Put the mug on a heat-resistant surface to cool for 15 to 30 minutes or until it's not too hot to touch to avoid any issues. I place my mug on the same mat I'm using for the mug press itself. Once it's cooled, remove the tape from under the handle and unwrap your beautiful mug. Step 5, show it off. Here is what my watercolor ink mug designs look like all completed. Step 6, customize your watercolor ink mug. If you love this project and want to customize one with your own designed color in, I have a way you can do that through my advanced program. You can get an exclusive toolkit I made and learn how to create your own customized mug with a special step-by-step video that shows the design process. The advanced program helps to advance your crafting skills by teaching you how to make these popular and beautiful designs unique and special just for you through tutorials and templates, as well as give you advanced access to my vast library of designs, projects, and resources. Now, I may or may not be accepting new members into the advanced program at the time you see this, but if you're interested, go to jennifermaker.com/advance to learn more and see how it all works. Aren't these just so cute? It's a lot of fun drawing with the Cricut once you get the hang of it, and even better when you add your own touch by coloring parts by hand. It is so fun to do. Now I have links to more information about each type of infusible ink pen and marker over at jennifermaker.com/595. Just remember to use the right kind for your machine and the right thickness for the design element that you're trying to color. There are a few things I really want you to keep in mind for this project. Be sure to store your pens and markers either flat or tipped down to keep the ink flowing smoothly, and remember to prime them with a little scribble before you use them in your Cricut. And while most of the pens and markers look very similar on the package, some of the infusible ink options can slightly change on paper and after heating. Making a swatch card will help you plan, but remember that creativity is rarely a completely predictable process. Whatever you make, I'm sure it will be beautiful. I hope you use these tips and designs to experiment and create your own fun projects. And if you want to learn how to customize a design that you can color in, visit jennifermaker.com/advance. Is there something else you want to know about decorating mugs? You can leave your question below this video or come ask over in our Cricut Crafters group at jennifermaker.com/CricutCrafters. And please come share photos of your mugs, all your projects. Posting images lets you show off your awesome creations, plus it inspires others to create, including me. And that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.